Hey guys, so what with my going back and forth everywhere in planes and in cars and doing lots of traveling, I've been listening to several different podcasts. So I thought I would make a video and recommend some podcasts to you guys. And if you want to, you can recommend podcasts to me also. So here we go. These are the podcasts that I've been listening to recently. First up is one called Bacon and Eggs. So you may not know this, but there are these YouTubers that I like to watch called the Super Carlin Brothers. It's two brothers, Jay and Ben Carlin, and they like to do theory videos about Pixar and Disney and Harry Potter and Star Wars and all kinds of stuff like that. And they have a younger brother, Tyler, who has started his own podcast with his best friend, Ethan. And they do movie reviews. So that is Bacon and Eggs. So far, they've reviewed all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They've done all of the Star Wars movies, and then they've done a couple of other things like the Back to the Future trilogy and Monty Python and the Holy Grail and some things like that. Sometimes they have special guests like Wheezy Waiter or the creator of the Pixar Theory, John Negroni, and other people like Tessa Netting or Seamus Gorman, but most of the time it's just the two guys. So at the end of every episode they do three different things. First, they do the villain ranking, and they rank the villains anywhere between Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, which they consider the worst villain of all time, and Heath Ledger's the Joker as the best villain. So yeah, that is their scale. Then they rank the movies on the list of all of the movies they have reviewed in the podcast. And finally, they give the movie a grade based on breakfast foods. My favorite of which is Julia's dad's pancakes. For The Phantom Menace, you have to actually listen to it to understand why it's given that grade, but it's really funny. It's one of my favorites. Anyway, it's a pretty fun show, and I tend to agree with them on most of their reviews. Plus, I met both of them recently, and they're really, really nice guys. Very down to earth, very cool. Highly recommend. Keeping with the more family-friendly podcasts, I will say that I have listened to a little bit of this one, but not all of them because there are lots of episodes. I think that there are about 200 episodes of it now, or something close to that. Maybe it's only 150. I don't know. Anyway, it is Ear Biscuits. Ear Biscuits is the Rhett and Link podcast. As you probably know, I subscribe to Rhett and Link, and I have seen them live and all of that stuff. So I've tried to listen to their podcast. I have not listened to every single episode, as I said, but I have listened to some, and they're pretty funny. When they started it off, it was more of an interview show, and they interviewed a bunch of YouTubers, and some of those YouTubers I don't really care about, so I just haven't listened to them. But they have interviewed some YouTubers that I actually watch and enjoy, so it's pretty cool to hear their stories. And then more recently, they've just kind of taken different topics and started talking about those instead of doing interviews. And I've heard a few of those episodes too, which are pretty funny. Anyway, there's not much else to say about that one. If you like Rhett and Link, you've probably already listened to Ear Biscuits, and if you haven't, then you should check it out and check out Rhett and Link also. They host Good Mythical Morning on YouTube, so check that out. Alright, so while I'm still on the more family-friendly-ish, maybe not completely, podcasts, I will talk about The Lost Boys. Now, this podcast actually reminds me of another one that I listened to a couple of years ago, maybe last year. I can't remember exactly when it started or when it stopped, but I will also talk about that one because they're very similar. So in this one, we have Jacob, who has watched the TV show Lost 7 times, and his friend Jack, who has never watched it. And the guy's name is actually Jack Shepherd, which is really weird because it's the name of the main character in the show Lost. So yeah, but he's never seen Lost. So they're going through and watching each episode and reviewing each episode. Unfortunately, they only do 1 episode per week, so it's gonna take a while. They're not even done with the first season yet. Anyway, this one has gotten me started rewatching Lost again. I just watched it not too long ago because I watched it when I listened to the other podcast that I will talk about. It is called Previously On. It is hosted by 2 friends of mine, Ron and Felonious, both of whom will probably comment on this video because they're like 2 of the only people who actually do. Anyway, their series is very similar where they go through and watch Lost. Ron had watched it several times before and Felonious had never seen it. I think they reviewed 2 or 3 episodes on each podcast. Or something like that. It's been a while. I think I'm going to end up listening to their podcast again so that I can kind of compare it to The Lost Boys. But yes, I would recommend both of those. So I'm listening to The Lost Boys. We'll probably listen to Previously On again. And I have started rewatching the series, so I'm like 16 episodes into the first season right now. I know a lot of people have problems with that show, but I still like it. So now it's time to get away from the more family-friendly podcasts and get to the more adult ones. So these are the other three I wanted to mention. The first one is called S-Town. You have probably heard about it. If you have heard about it and not listened to it, you should give it a try because it is pretty interesting. It's produced by the same people who do Serial and This American Life, and the title S-Town is not the actual title. The actual title is Shittown. There. I said it. But since I guess you can't have that in the title of a podcast, they had to censor it a little bit. So it's called S-Town. S-Town is the story of John B. McLemore, who lives in Woodstock, Alabama, which if you know anything about me, you probably know that I live in Alabama, and I can tell you right now, Woodstock is very close to where I live. So this is like in my backyard. Anyway, when it starts off, John B. has emailed the creators of This American Life, a radio show, asking them to come down to Woodstock to investigate a murder that has been swept under the rug by the corrupt police department of his hometown, and pretty much everyone else in the town too. So that's how it starts, with the investigation of a boy who was beaten to death. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't really interested in this podcast at all when I first heard about it, which is why it took me like over a year to actually listen to it. But I'm so glad I did. I can't really say much else about it because I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say that it was not what I expected at all. But that's not a bad thing. Anyway, it's 7 episodes long, and each episode is about an hour or so, sometimes less than an hour, so it doesn't take very long to get through it. I actually binged listened to it one night. I wish I could say more about it because the premise of it is not at all what it is about. It's so interesting, and if you like stories about people, I guess, you should totally give it a try because it's really good. Okay, so the last two are actually podcasts that are done by Kevin. Yes, that Kevin, my ex-husband, Kevin, but I listened to both of them, and they're pretty good. But they're not for everyone, I will say that. They're definitely not for everyone. Honestly, I'm surprised that I listened to one of them. But yeah, so I'll start with the one that I'm surprised that I listened to, and you may be surprised that I listened to it also. It is called Where is the Line? So Kevin and his friend Jamie talk about some really messed up stuff in this one. So I don't recommend it to everyone. You have to have a strong stomach to get through these. Anyway, their podcast tells depraved, disturbing, but true stories. For instance, the first episode is about Charla Nash, a woman who had her face and hands ripped off by a chimpanzee. That's the kind of stuff you're going to find in this podcast. The second episode is about a lady who kills and flays her husband. So yes, very disturbing. You may not be able to listen to it. The third episode, I'm not even going to talk about it because I don't know how I made it through that one. The other ones were not too bad, so I would not be surprised if no one listened to this. But no matter how disturbing these stories are, they're actually really informative and really interesting. Sometimes they go into graphic detail about things, but they try to keep it lighthearted also. Lighthearted but informative, so they kind of joke around a little bit when maybe they shouldn't, but it makes it funnier, and you feel bad about laughing during those points, but also it's kind of funny, and it's also terrible. So yeah, if you listen to this one, you're probably going to either be really turned off by it, or you're gonna sit there and laugh at things and feel really bad about laughing at them because it's not something you should laugh at, but it is kind of funny. It's not something you should laugh at, but the way they tell it, it does make it kind of funny. So like I said, it's disturbing, but it's also kind of lighthearted and informative. I don't know how else to describe this, but there are only 3 episodes. The first episode is probably the tamest one of them so far, so if you can't make it through that one, then you probably don't even want to try with the others. But if you do make it through that one, then, you know, give the others a try too. This is not one I would recommend for my mom, so mom, do not listen to this, okay? But the last one that I have to recommend is also one of Kevin's podcasts. He has 2. This is the second one, and this one is called Thick Smoke and Loud Music. If you saw my last video, you may have heard me talking about this podcast, actually. I mentioned that Kevin was interviewing some of the people from the bar that we both used to go to, the one that is now closed, and yeah, this is that podcast. So this has interviews from lots of people that I know, so I guess for me, it's very interesting to listen to because I know these people. It also has lots of music from local musicians, so it's bands that I have actually seen there at the bar, but it is definitely not recommended for the youngsters because there is a lot of profanity, and I mean a lot, and non-family friendly stories. There are a lot of those too. Still, it's pretty fun, and I may eventually show up in it talking about some stories from the bar. Right now there's only one episode released, but I know that Kevin is working on the second one, so hopefully it'll be up soon because I really want to hear it. And I do have an update on the bar, actually. You know, I said that it was sold and the new owner was trying to get the permits and everything, but somehow things fell through and now there's no owner. There's no owner of the bar, so it's just kind of in limbo right now, and nobody knows what to do or what's gonna happen. So it may be a good thing that he's actually working on this podcast with all of these interviews, because there may not be a bar ever again. Who knows? Anyway, I guess that is all that I will recommend for now anyway. There are a few other ones that I listen to that I haven't recommended because I am not too into them, and then there are some that I want to listen to that I just haven't had a chance to get started on them, so I can't really recommend those either. But the ones I've mentioned in this video are the ones that I am listening to currently and really into. So my question for you is, do you listen to any podcasts? Do you have any that you could recommend to me and to others who may be watching this? If you do, let me know in the comments below and I will check them out. Well, I guess that's all for now, so I'll see you guys later. Bye!